A team of former special operatives hired to steal a mysterious, heavily guarded briefcase while navigating a maze of shifting loyalties. Ronin is up next on Inside Movies. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Inside Movies. Today we're talking about the 1998 Robert De Niro film Ronin, directed by John Frankenheimer, and it's got crazy car chases, and it's one of my favorites, so I wanted to talk about it. But before we get into that, let's take a minute to talk about Andrew Buckley's books that are available at a local bookshop near you. So, Andrew, can you tell us about some of your books?
Yeah, man, I write weird shit. I started out as a writer for adults, writing urban fantasy satirical fictions, which is all fairly silly Douglas Adamsy kind of stuff, and that's kind of where I started out. And I ended up writing for kids, so I did a kind of a full weird ass spectrum. So you can find my books in most bookstores. Definitely Devil and the Goldfish and Stiltskin if you like, funny urban fantasy stuff that's kind of quirky and weird. And if you have kids or teens, then the Hair in All the Wrong Places series is available wherever books are sold. And it's a fun little story about a kid who turns into a werewolf while he's going through puberty and might be a classmate. And there's all kinds of wonderful things that go bump in the night that go along with it. So I encourage you to check it out.
Right. And I have included a link in the description of this video. So if you want to click on that and see more about Andrew's books, go ahead and do that. Without further ado, let's get into Ronin. Guys, what did you like about it? What was the good of this awesome movie?
I was so glad to watch it again. It held up so well. I think. And I love that Andrew disagrees with me. See our previous Predator recording for how we disagree on what a good movie is.
We don't agree on a lot.
Yeah.
You gave Predator an A+, warning.
That's true, though. We did agree that it was a great movie. We just disagreed
for
on
very different reasons. Maybe we can find some common ground here.
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to. No, that's going to happen.
All right, well, we're on the good section, so...
Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's lead with the good, and then we'll get into what Andrew apparently doesn't like about Ronin.
Okay. One of my absolute favorite things in any genre, in any kind of writing, is when the characters don't speak in exposition. They are not, because humans don't speak in exposition to each other. They don't give context to what they are talking about when they talk to a person, because that person is involved in the same conversation and the same situation. And Ronin is full of that kind of dialogue.
Lack of exposition. Yes, it's true. There was a lack of exposition. If there was a lack of exposition, you're right. It was missing. It was missing entirely.
I like that the movie treats you like an adult, and it leaves you to kind of try and figure out what's going on and who these people are. And, and
there's a very clear plot if you put those pieces together in that dialogue, and that's what I like about it the most, the puzzles. And I found out that the rewrite, the reason why it's like that, okay, so I'm sitting in my room, I am watching Ronin again, I am thinking to myself, shit, this reminds me of Spartan by David Mamet. I cannot get over how much like Spartan this movie is. And then I realized that David Mamet, I love this movie, rewrote all the dialogue in Ronin. He came in and script doctored it at the end. And what David Mamet tends to do is strike out exposition. And so I will give you this as context for why I like it, Andrew. So I'm a David Mamet fan, so you can hold that against me, I suppose. His work more than his disposition, I like.
I like that they're, the characters are kind of smart asses, the quick comebacks, and the dialogue's really snappy and fun, and that you don't know where the allegiances are, and it's kind of like who's telling the truth and who's double crossing who, and this whole aspect of it is fun. But like for me, it's got to be the car chases, right? These are some of the greatest car chases ever filmed, I think. Possibly the best car chase movie ever.
I mean, it's up there. It's definitely up there.
High up.
I love the cameras on the bottom of the car, and and just everything is filmed at like full speed, real practical cars. I think I heard they have like 300 different drivers hired for this thing. Like it's a massive production that like I don't think we'll ever see anything like this again. Like in the in the age of CGI and Fast and the Furious,
probably not.
craziness. This is like
that's one of the things I found so delicious about this movie is that there was no CGI, or if there was any, you couldn't tell. Right? It's from an era where they weren't really doing that. I mean, there might have been some background replacements or something, but so much of it was grounded in reality. Do I think Robert De Niro is like a killer action star? No. But if you Google mugshots of people who actually do this kind of work and like murder people for money, they look exactly like Robert De Niro. They're just like regular dudes, right? They're not handsome action stars. They're just like everyday people who have a certain set of skills. And that's one of the things I like about this movie too.
And he didn't need to be an action star for this. Like it was such a interesting compilation of the team that she'd put together. I forget what her boss's name is, the actor's called. But it was so, I really wanted to see, I came out of it wanting to see like the Robert De Niro, Jean Reno buddy movie where they go off and do other heists.
This movie, I ambushed you with a cup of coffee. Love that scene so much.
I remembered that. That's what stood out when you put Ronin down as the movies for this recording session, or one of the movies. I was like, man, I remember the car chases from that movie, and I remember Robert De Niro ambushing Sean Bean with a cup of coffee. And that was the only two things I actually remembered. So I had to go back and rewatch it. But that stood out.
He ambushes the KGB guy with the other cup of coffee, like figures out that he's not, just a tech nerd weakling.
Yes,
with a different cup of coffee trick.
Stellan Skarsgård.
One of the things that I remember the most, Baron Harkonnen, by the way, he's going to be amazing as Baron. Robert De Niro's long introduction in the film of walking around and pacing out the cafe and hiding the gun and doing all of those things. Yes, it's a little bit silly. I'll admit that I don't know what his plan was. He's going to run out and then get that hidden gun. But you had, up until that point, as a person who watches a lot of action films, I had never seen a person go into a dangerous situation carefully on screen. They always talked about how awesome they were, but they never actually did the pace out. And you saw how much work it would actually be to be careful in a situation like that.
Okay, sorry, George, I'm going to straddle the good and the bad for a second. But I liked that sequence with him like casing the joint because it had that level of realism that if he was somebody who is that careful, who is so concerned for his own well-being to, professionally protect himself, that he would do that. And he states it when, I think it's the girl that asks him, or John Reno asks him, and he says, I never walk into a place where I don't know how to get out of it, or something like that. But then, and that would be cool, except for the rest of the movie, he proceeds to go into places that he doesn't know how to get out of. So he isn't backed up.
I absolutely cede you that point. That is one Buckley dollar that you can spend anywhere you want. That is amazing.
It's redeemable at all kinds of places.
In all kinds of places. You're 100% right. Yeah, he's the worst at that. Although he does pass the wisdom on to Jean Reno at one point. Don't go in there, he says, right? Don't go in there. It's a trap. Oh, there's so much in this movie that I love. When the sinister level at which Skarsgård, how do you say his last name? Skarsgård. When he cites that little child in the playground.
That's twisted.
And it's just like, I don't even know her. And I was going to splatter her brains. Imagine what I'll do to you. And I don't even like you. That's actually the most heavy-handed part in the film. That is the most cartoonish and the most silly because like, immediately, the police would arrive if that little girl got shot, and then what would they do? They wouldn't be able to have their meeting, right? But that whole sequence, I just thought was so great.
I like the locations in this movie. I like in the 90s. I don't know if they were really necessarily going like all over the world to film this, and you got Nice and France, and you really like nowadays you see like the Bourne Identity or whatever, and they're filming in those spots. But back
I'm glad you brought up the Bourne Identity because I was a young Robert Ludlum fan and I never connected the man in the wheelchair. The man in the wheelchair they're referring to is a villain from the first Bourne Identity.
What?
Yes.
Wait, from the first Born Identity book
In the
or
novel.
Because
In
those
the
are two
books.
very different things. Okay.
Books.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the books. The books were amazing. I was very
Yeah.
disappointed in the movies when the movies came out.
So the man in the wheelchair that they referred to as all working for, you know, in the first Bourne Identity is like a mercenary, you know, fixer essentially.
Right.
And it was revealed later. One of the scriptwriters said that they just lifted that. It was their favorite part of the book, so they just figured they'd put it in their script and hope that people would think of it as an homage rather than something that needed litigation.
It's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, it is a fine line these days. Yellow cigarettes, letting the young version of me that first saw this movie into the idea that the world is different in other places, right? It sounds silly, but when you are young and you have this myopic view of the world until you start going places, you're like, why are those cigarettes yellow? Why are these people talking like this? Wow, are those real cities? Was that a set? No, those are real places, Gregory. People live like that in other places. That's one of the things that you were saying, George, and I love that about this film.
I love the team aspect. I don't know, maybe I like as adults, like so much of our lives are kind of like alone or with our family and our small group, and just seeing like a group of like dudes and ladies like working together on a project, I don't know, it just makes me happy. Ocean's 11, Predator, all these sort of, whenever there's like any sort of like group working together, I like that. And these guys are all very cool and mysterious, and you know where they come from, and it's such a, they're all from different countries, and I don't know, I think it's very fun. It's very 90s, but not with like a different 90s vibe than like the Tarantino and stuff. It's more
George, I'm going to stroke my chin as I say this. You're self-aware to realize that that's the world you've built for yourself, right? Working on comics is teams of people, men and women coming together for specific goals on a tight deadline, and you never know what's in the case.
Through email.
It's your whole life, George. We just, as far as I know, you've never killed anyone to achieve your goals.
We don't know that for sure.
My comic book writing, I haven't even met like most of like a lot of the people that I've collaborated with. I got a guy I do a monster book with. We've done 9 issues together. I've never even talked to them on the telephone once.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
weird word.
You're the man in the wheelchair.
Ronin would be a much more boring movie if that was, like that. They just kind of all email each other about what they're gonna do.
Updated Ronin. It's just all by Skype and
it's just a bunch of Zoom meetings.
Right.
De Niro can't get the shit to work because he's too old.
Yeah. Oh my god. This movie also has the distinction, another good, of having, and I only found this out not because I am a Bond fan, but my Bond knowledge doesn't run deep. I found this on a little bit of trivia. There are 3 characters who played villains in Bond movies in Ronin. Sean Bean, he's in GoldenEye. Michael Consdale is in Moonraker in the 79 or something. Yeah. And then Jonathan Pryce, who's in Tomorrow Never Dies. So there's right? So you have 3 Bond villains. You've got the professional, Jean Reno is in there. You've got the taxi driver. You've got Baron Harkonnen now. Man, it's a pretty stacked cast.
And the Olympic figure skater.
And an Olympic figure skater. That's true.
I like the title of this movie, like the Ronin, and like how like they're all kind of ex-military people, and the Cold War's over, and this is set in the 90s, and so they have they're kind of masterless warriors, right? And because their countries aren't fighting together, so now they're working as mercenaries and awesome car drivers, and I just like that connection. I like the title of the movie, and I just think it's a cool concept.
Now, I'll tie that into the bad, because I love the scene where the guy talks about the 47 Ronin. I love this idea of like they're people without nations. The Cold War is over. They have to fight for something, so now they fight for money. All that stuff is great. But it's all undone, like a little loose thread on an Icelandic sweater that you just pull and pull and pull. As soon as at the end of the movie, Robert De Niro says, "I never left. I'm still with the CIA," basically, is what he says. And so it undoes the entire context of the title, the film, the drama. That part, I just wish that line was gone.
I thought that too, but I didn't like because it did undo the the principal concept behind everything. But then I thought it was a kind of cool twist that whole time he was still actually working on the job, and he wasn't one of those people. But he obviously like just blended in perfectly with him.
All right, let's get into the bad. What did you guys not like about Ronin?
I didn't like the candy villain, the candy Russians. Every flavor of Russian villain they tried to pack into just one Russian on screen. They put him in the coat. They give him too much money. They make him he's the worst part of the movie. He's the worst part of the movie to me is their candy. And as a person of Belarusian descent, I'm speaking from a place of hating that all through the 80s and 90s, anyone that would have been my cousin was cast in these movies as the horrible villain that has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. So maybe I'm just feeling a little attacked by him, but that part I didn't like.
Are you attacked by the accuracy, or that it was misrepresented, or what are you trying to say?
What I'm saying is that trauma comes in many forms.
I get that. I understand that.
One thing I didn't like is that they changed the ending from the original version, and you've seen the director's cut.
Yeah, I have the DVD. Yeah.
Yeah, where the IRA grabs the girl and throws her in the back of it.
Deirdre. The girl has a name, George. Deirdre.
That's a better ending. I like that ending, and apparently it didn't test very well, and people didn't like it in the audience, so they changed it, and I don't know. I think it's a better ending, and I would have preferred it to end that way.
I 100% agree. People don't like sad endings, right? And nobody likes it when the one female character is taken away to be butchered at the end of a film. I could see that being a bit of a downer at the end.
I mean, I had fun memories of the movie. Once again, you made me rewatch a movie that I had fun memories of, and when I watched it, it ruined it. Because then I'm looking at it from a different point of view, and I'm like,
that was Predator for me. See, we are the same.
No, oh come on, let's not go down that road. There's no discernible, really solid plot for this movie. It is all centered around a MacGuffin, which I hate. I know that it's a big, who's the guy that made it famous? Was it Orson Welles or
Hitchcock?
Hitchcock.
Oh, you're talking about Rosebud. It's there's a Rosebud in that case.
It's so weak. That's such a weak way to go. I know they didn't Pulp Fiction, and it just not knowing what's in there gives it no value, nothing, no stakes to go by. Drives me nuts. It's such lazy storytelling.
Let me ask you a question.
It doesn't matter. That's the point, right?
Let me ask you a question.
It's the nuclear codes, and that's what everybody's after. Who cares?
What would you put in the case that would make it better?
I don't know. I wouldn't.
See, that I think is one of those moments where if they're hunting the case, anything they put in it is actually going to reduce the drama, and so not knowing is the only way to keep the stakes up. He knows what's in the case. He just didn't tell you, Andrew.
I know, but I want to know what's in the case.
If you want to know what's in the case, it'll cost you $1 Buckley.
I only got the one. I don't want to give that away. I just earned it, and I don't want to give it up now. I also thought the pacing was off. It's 2 hours and something. It got for a few parts where I was like, holy shit, this is dragging on. And I actually, might have possibly skipped a few 10-second moments ahead on Netflix.
I like my movies long and boring. See, this is another thing. Contextually, long, boring shots. I love it. Can I say a bad thing that is actually a good thing? It's bad for all the people who live in those towns. Did you watch the backgrounds and see how many innocent people got killed?
Well, a guy on the motorcycle.
So many people died. So many
people at little cafes.
Yeah.
And they actually put the squibs on them. They didn't just fall down. They're dead. Those people did not make it through lunch. They're done.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
It took away some of the likability of Robert De Niro and John Reno's characters, Sam, which also I don't like because Sam and Samurai and Ronin and that whole thing is a little too.
I never even put that together.
Come on, George, you totally did.
I didn't
either.
But it made it that they like each other. I like that, but that they just have no regard for innocent lives. I wanted that to be addressed somewhere. I didn't mind if they didn't have any regard for them, but I just wanted them to at least show some on-screen callousness for regular people.
To Andrew's point, though, I think that like the movie is a bit long, and one thing that's a problem in like watching movies on like Netflix at home versus like going to the theater and seeing it is how dialed in you are, right? Like nowadays it's like so tempting to check your phone while you're on, like if you're at home, and it's especially if it's like daytime. Like I try and like if I'm watching a movie at home, I try and turn off all the lights, put the phone away, and like really get dialed in, because that's the best experience when you're watching a movie and you're totally invested and you're in that world. And it's hard to do. And when a movie is 2.5 hours long, and you got to get up and go to the bathroom, and go get snacks and stuff like that, it does kind of take away from that just teleportation into a different world. And that's what it was great about watching it in the movies back in the 90s.
True.
They could have cut the car chase for length, George. It does go on quite long. It's quite long, the car chase.
They could have cut Robert De Niro casing a cafe.
We didn't even talk about like them going down the freeway.
He could have just been driving around the cafe really fast in a car.
Like that's like this is the reason why to watch this movie. Like, yeah, the characters are interesting, the dialogue's snappy and stuff like that. But the reason to watch this movie, in my opinion, is for the car chases.
Car chases, totally.
Yeah. And
for me, it's the dialogue. It's for putting the little pieces together. I actually found I like the car chases. Don't get me wrong; they're great, except for the part where Robert De Niro's obvious stunt double comes out with the rocket launcher, and it's like the man does not have a build even remotely like Robert De Niro, right? And he's like holding on to the car stiffly while he's holding that thing. My disbelief suspension meter dropped a little bit during that moment on film, and I remember that right from seeing it in the theater, which I enjoyed. But I was like, wait. And when he was like theater size, you could really tell it wasn't Robert De Niro.
One thing that is like that could have been better is they could have had more car chases. I feel like they're kind of sparsely put through. Like they're long when you get them, but there could have been more.
I think that made it more effective, though. I think if you had overdone it with the car chases, then it would have detracted. It would have thrown the balance off. I think it's pretty well balanced in as far as dialogue to planning to heist to car chases was concerned.
I disagree. I think there could have been more.
That's fair. You can disagree with it.
And like another movie that we disagree on, our Predator video. Please see that if you haven't, dear viewers. There's a great first aid scene which strains credulity. There's a moment where you're like, okay, he's going to give them some feedback about how to cut him open and take the bullet out, but that he's conscious through the whole thing.
And then passes out.
Right, and then passes out like just as a scene transition. His pass out at the end just seemed like a reason for a scene transition. You didn't need it. You might as well just had him be stoic through the whole thing, because they already cut him open and took out a bullet. Might as well just have a whiskey and keep going.
Another negative is like Sean Bean doesn't die. And that's kind of his thing, right?
I wrote that down and thought, nah, that's a silly thing to say. But you said it, so I'm going to back you on it. That, yeah, I was kind of bummed too.
I was so glad that they got the loose. Okay, how many heist movies where you're like, that's the weak link, they should get rid of him?
And they got rid of him.
and they don't. But in this movie, they're like, no, that's the guy, that's the weak link. He's off the team. Right?
Yeah, that's really smart.
So great. I know we're supposed to be talking about bad things, so it's bad that he didn't die on screen like all his other movies, but it is, I think, good for the film overall.
Hey, let's get into the skinny. What do you guys grade Ronin?
I got to give it a C, simply because it was too slow, man. The pacing of it as an adult, I liked it better when I was 98, when I was 18, when I saw it in the theater. But as a 41-year-old, I'm like, man, I wish this thing would speed up, and I got to go to the bathroom. It's bad.
I give it a B+. I think there's lots of fast scenes in it, and I really love those car chases, and the action in the movie is phenomenal. It's really, really good. It moves at such a fast clip. Like everything is like realistic. It's not like they've slowed down the cars or anything like that. It's like it's going like full throttle, and the characters are cool and interesting. And yeah, I do think that it could have been even a little bit snappier and faster in the pacing, but the characters are cool, the cars are cool, and it's a good movie. Definitely check it out.
Ronin is a movie, I think, that if you remember it, you'll be convinced you saw it in black and white. You'll be convinced that the first time you saw it, it was black and white. But it's not. It's just so desaturated that your memory is in black and white. I give Ronin 40 out of 47 samurai.
On the curve, that's what, a B plus, A minus?
I think that's a B plus maybe on the curve. I really like this movie. I like movies, but I like movies that are rewritten by David Mamet, that are long and slow in parts, and that Sean Bean lives. So if you don't like that, you can take my review and you can put it in a figure skating case and throw it off a bridge.
Oh, man.
Okay. And that's going to do it for another episode of Inside Movies. I've been George Michail. He's been GMB CHOMICHUK, and that's Andrew Buckley on the end there. Guys, if you want to follow us on social media, I've attached links to all of our profiles in the description of this video, and also Andrew Buckley's novels. Check them out. Ask your local bookstore to bring them in if they don't already have them, and we'll see you next time. Peace.